Storytellers, in my view, the great expert on this subject is a professor named Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell is sort of my hero. So every single thing I've done, I've tried to stick to the notion of myth. The idea that it's the storytellers in any society, any group, family, culture, society, country, tribe, whether it's 100,000 years ago or in a campfire around a cave or now in television, it's the people who tell myths in any culture that have the most, in my view, power. Particularly when we were around the campfires in a cave, darkness lurked at the edge of the fire. And to keep the darkness at bay, to understand who we are and how we got here and where we're going and what our history is and what is the cosmos, all of that. It's the people who told who held the myths of the people, who actually kept the people in the right psychological state in order to progress in terms of culture. I believe that storytellers have always, even among the Native American people, the storytellers were considered to be like magical because they somehow knew these things. And they had access to visions and powers that others did not. And I think that's still true today with great storytellers. I mean, breathtaking stories that one asks themselves, how could he possibly or she done that or gone to that place? So I set about trying to retell these myths for these times as best I could. When it comes to Kindred, I wanted to sort of take on the myth of vampires. What is that really about? Where does all that come from? And that's really the story of Kindred. It's a world. It's a world peopled by creatures that seem like us, but are more than us. Beings that whose id has been set free. And they are everything that frightens us about ourselves. And I don't mean frightens us like monstrous looking, because they're more beautiful than we are. They're more passionate than we are. They're more loyal than we are. They're more loving than we are. They're more brutal than we are. They're everything we are, but to the nth degree. And they are magical, which we really are, but have forgotten.
If you look at it all together, for a world to be useful to tell a story, it has to have a wholeness to it and a completeness to it. And you can look at it from different points of view, but the completeness of this one really is, just like the completeness of our culture, is that there is, you can see every aspect of humanness in the various expressions of these clans, the sexuality and all of the different qualities there. And I suppose we could look at it archetypally as well, but there's just a real human completeness about it, which is interesting because they're creatures that are not human.
Their vampires were divided into clans. They had many clans. I chose 5 of them. I wanted to extend that metaphor and make the clans at war with each other. In the creation of any world, there were the rules of that world. And one of the rules was that the kindred live among us. That there is something called the masquerade by which they can live among us and undetected. You can imagine from their perspective, they exist in a sea of human beings. And it must be a terrifying thing on some level, And so the masquerade, I have the masquerade in my mythology, beginning around the time of the Spanish Inquisition, which of course they were torturing people and trying anyone who was thought to be witches or anyone thought to be not normal or not Christian and so forth, not human or evil. And so that was the time that they arrived at the notion of the masquerade, and that they had to somehow hide from humans by living among them. That was the reason I took on the vampire myth. There had been no serious dramas about vampires. I was at Creative Artists Agency for a very long time, and at that time my agent was Tony Krantz. He walks into a bookshop in San Francisco and asked, "What's the coolest thing you got going?" And they said, this vampire masquerade game, a role-playing game. He asked me if I'd be interested in taking a look at that, and I wrote a Bible of all the world and the rules and stuff, and that's what later became the sort of secretive document that people referred to as the world according to John Leakley.
And it was the entire world, like the different clans and why they are the way they are, and it was based I mean, I guess that's the first time I really understood that it was based on The Masquerade, and it was a lot of information. I mean, I was reading it like trying to remember everything like I'm in school or something and I was going to get a C. Like, dang.
My recollection of it is that certain small pieces were shared with us, but only the pieces that would be helpful to us with regard to our character. As an actor, I'm someone who I like to do research, I like to do reading, I like to get ideas from wherever I can get them, and the whole document it was a rumored document.
We had to keep it secret because no one wanted the information about the show. It was so kind of radically different than any show that had been done, that we wanted it to just come full blown as a world without anyone having access to the rules, and so they could discover the show on their own.
I know that document existed. I never saw it.
You're out in the open now. I'm coming after you and your business.
It was a new world for me. I hadn't really experienced or read anything, you know, about vampires. There weren't vampire shows on TV. It was a new thing for us. I was as sort of committed and interested and enthralled by the world of the vampires. It was just romantic and dangerous and cool. It was just really cool. These guys would be on all these awesome suits shooting phosphorus guns, and I would show up in my, you know, leather coat and my, you know, Smith & Wesson. So there was a certain respect and admiration that I had for what they were experiencing versus what I was doing. And my responsibility was to be human, was to play the human, was to be that relatable piece to the rest of the audience. I don't think I understood that back then as well as I do now. I would have liked to have been older then, and I think, you know, had the shot of knowing what I know now back then would have been awesome, but that's the case with everything, right?
I made the show for Fox, and also Fox was young and hungry, and they wanted to do kind of a whatever was cool and sexy, within bounds. There were more bounds then than there are now. I remember the very first thing that they said was that one rule, John, you can have sex, you can have blood, you can't have sex and blood at the same time. Got it. So we refrained from that. Not much. It was helpful that the White Wolf material was there because it's always, you know, you hold it in your hand, it's a book, and you know they knew that it was popular. It would have an automatic audience, so they knew that, and so it helped them make the decision to put the show in the air.
The original pilot read like a film.
If you were working for Luna, you'd tell me, wouldn't you?
The piece that you know John Leakley put together was phenomenal. The idea of playing Frank Ohanic was really attractive. I mean, he's sort of a broken man, you know, fighting his own demons. And one of the things that I really loved was he was recovering from the loss of a girlfriend who had committed suicide, only to get involved in a relationship with Katie Vernon's character, who's this beautiful woman, turns out to be a vampire. That really propelled the rest of the series, as far as my character goes, to really find Luna, which is an unusual circumstance because he slowly discovers that these vampires exist. The thing that I really loved about the original story was I was playing this cop who was chasing the bad guys, but he also slowly develops this relationship with the prince of these vampires, Mark's character. He really starts to lean on him a little bit. He starts to, you know, reluctantly need him. This is a much larger issue than just what he can handle by himself. And he also is a smart enough guy that he's able to start to sort out the rules and the laws of the vampire. So he sort of gets sucked into this world. You know, it just made for really great drama.
No bodies. There's never any bodies. Half of Eddie Fiore's haunts look like this. Bullet holes in blood, but never any bodies. And what'd they do? They just bleed all over and then walk home?
Look, what do you want me to say? I can't explain it, can you?
You may not like to hear it, Sonny, but the fact is, they're vampires.
You listen to me, Frank. These are very dangerous people. You don't want to get mixed up in this, man.
You know something you're not telling me?
I always loved kind of slightly supernatural things, you know. John was a friend, an acquaintance, you know. I can't remember how we met. I think we met at Universal Studios years ago, and I remember we used to have lunch, and we kind of talked about doing something together one day, you know.